Gwata TV gives you a first look at North Central Washington's business news. You'll hear from our local business, tech, and education companies as Jenny discusses hot topics and current events with some of the best innovators and pioneers in North Central Washington.
Welcome to Gwata TV. I'm your host, Jenny Rojanasa-Tien. I'm the Executive Director of Gwata, which is your local technology alliance. We serve North Central Washington, that's Grant, Okanogan, Chelan, and Douglas counties, in the form of event education around technology, entrepreneurship, and STEM education. I'm excited to have you on today's episode where we'll be talking with Confluence Health, not only an incredible employer in North Central Washington, but innovators of technology and advancement. I'm going to be having Dr. Clarke on today. He's the Chief Medical Information Officer. So join us for the program and let's learn together. Welcome back to Gwata TV. I'm here today with our special guest, Dr. Clarke from Confluence Health. Dr. Clarke is the Chief Information Medical Officer. Did I say that correctly?
You got it.
All right. Well, Dr. Clarke, thanks for being here today.
Yes, thanks for inviting me. Excited to be here.
Can you tell me a little bit about your background? What is your role at Confluence Health and the patients you see and serve?
Yeah, you bet. So I'm an internal medicine doctor by training, so it's primary care, and I do less hospital work now than I used to do, but I'm also the Chief Medical Informatics Officer, which means that I get to translate the technical stuff that we have for software to how end users actually use it, and how it's to try to make it easier for the doctors, the nurses to put information into an electronic format so that we can take care of patients. It's a wonderful blend because as an internist, I'm always looking for a better mousetrap in terms of how do I keep track of patients' medical records and the things that I need to do, but also have the information at my fingertips so that I can research whatever I need, for the latest medical care. Just to frame it, Confluence is a integrated medical group now. We have the Central Washington Hospital in addition to our Wenatchee Valley Hospital, and then quite a number of satellite clinics that stretch all the way to Canada and to Moses Lake and down south to Mattawa and off to Kashmir. And so we serve a large geographic area, and it's exciting to actually be able to develop these technologies to basically have one medical record system that is available across this entire area. So it's pretty exciting.
Well, the digital transformation in every industry, right, across the board, and healthcare being a critical piece because it affects lives, right? The information is power, and I'm sure when you're a patient coming into whatever healthcare system, quick access for the physicians as far as your background and your history and your needs is really critical. Especially out here in North Central Washington, as you mentioned, you're serving patients all the way up to Canada who may be coming into different locations. So I'm imagining that the technology you're using is making their complete care holistic, easily accessible for the doctors, and that's amazing.
Yeah, I've been in practice for a long time, having finished residency in 1986, and so this was long before we had the electronic medical record, or the electronic health record is what people usually refer to it now as. And we had paper we pushed around and charts, and if somebody saw somebody in OMAC, I might not get those records for a week. And now it really truly is at my fingertips. And not only do I have records that are available to me from throughout our system, but now with the big push for something called interoperability, where we have access to outside medical records. So people go over to Seattle for medical care. They're seeing it at Seattle Cancer Care Alliance, seen it Virginia Mason, that I now have access to many of those records also at my fingertips, which is quite a transformation of care.
Absolutely. And you talked about charts and access to information. Confluence Health is also really making a push to make medical information for their patients more accessible through your new program called MyChart.
Exactly.
Let's talk a little bit about MyChart and what that program is doing for patients in our community.
Yeah, in the past, if patients wanted to see their information in the medical record, they had to go through a very laborious process of making a request and getting things printed out and then having paper copies made. But now with this software called MyChart, which is a patient portal, it's basically an application that sits on two different types of platforms, one on your computer and the other one is on a mobile device such as an iPhone or Android or the iPad, and it enables the patient to be able to see their information, their laboratory tests that were done, their medications, their allergies, and then actually become engaged actually in their medical care by being able to see this stuff real time. There's lots of other functionalities in there that can be very helpful to the patient. Sometimes navigating a phone tree is kind of challenging. You know, I'm a patient periodically also myself, and having to make a phone call and try to get a hold of the person that I either want a medication refill or something can be a little bit challenging in anybody's phone tree. But MyChart is that it's kind of like email on steroids. It's secure, so no one else can look at it. It is it protects the person's privacy, but it also enables you to get that information. Certainly see your medical records instantly, but also to be able to request information from your care team, from your medical team. Maybe you need medications refilled. Perhaps you need to set up an appointment. Sometimes it's just something you need to ask your doc, what should I do? Do I need to come in and see the doc? We do make some notations actually within MyChart that if it's an acute medical problem, like you have chest pain, that would not be the appropriate venue for this. But for a tremendous amount of communication that patients have with their doctors and their nurses, this is a nice way to get that.
Well, and then the accessibility, I'm looking at the brochure for MyChart, which I'm sure we'll put up as well. Instead of only being able to reach your doctor on Monday through Friday, people are able to do a prescription request at night or over the weekend, or ask a question whenever that may come up to a care team. Also, like you said, the transparency, easily seeing their medical information and lab test right back on the comfort of their home and their telephone without having go into the office.
Yes, and after you've been discharged from the hospital, you can see a lot of the lab tests and things that were done in the hospital. And I think as we move forward, we'll have more and more of the actual notes from the various care teams. So, whether it's a physical therapy note, whether it's nursing notes or doctor notes. So a lot of times maybe you don't remember all the things that happen in the visit because we don't always hear everything that's being said, but the ability to go back and actually see that is fabulous. And the other piece of MyChart, besides being able to see those records, is also the ability to download those records. And if you're going to see somebody else, let's say somebody's going to go over to Seattle and going to see another provider, to be able to actually, it's called view, download, and transmit. So you can actually send that to the provider that's coming on. We do that automatically with referrals, but gives the patient the control to, maybe they don't have a referral, but they just want to see another doc and they want to have those records transferred. I have patients who are in Arizona, my snowbirds. It's a small world. I mean, I've actually had messages come from Europe, from Africa, and so people can still be in contact with me as their doc. If I have, I'm trying to get their blood pressure under a little bit better control, maybe their blood sugars are not quite right, and they just want to send me a note and say, well, doc, what should I do in this? And it's really nice to have that. People often like to not only request their appointments, but they also like to to be able to see what their bills are, or to pay their bills online. It's another nice feature. You know, you can just log in and take care of it right there and see what your account is. So just lots of good info.
And with MyChart, you want to encourage people, they can go online to Android or their iStore and download the app.
Yes.
They can also go online to mychart.confluencehealth.org and start to sign up, because this is something they should proactively do before they even need to come into a provider, right? Just have that at their fingertips, so when the occasion arises, they have the accessibility to their provider.
Yep, as soon as they are entered into the system, we can sign them up and they get special activation code and their own password, and off they go.
And it's a free service as a patient.
Indeed
correct?
It is.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back from that, you'll see a tech tip from one of our Gwata members, so stay tuned.
Hi, this is Dan Paquette with Key Methods with this week's Tech Tip. Today we're going to talk about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is costing businesses over $1 trillion every year. Smaller companies feel that cybersecurity is only an issue for the larger companies, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. A lot of today's attacks are actually aimed at small business. These attackers disguise themselves as legitimate businesses like FedEx and UPS, use their logos, make fake websites, and they trick even the most cautious individuals. So why are they doing all that? Well, many of you have already seen what happens with ransomware, where they lock up your system and you have to pay a ransom to get your data back. But many of you haven't experienced the phishing attacks where they're getting vital information from you or your staff and then using it against you or selling it out on the open web. So how do you protect yourself from all this? At Key Methods, we recommend a layered approach. Start with a business class firewall to scan all the data going in and out of your network. Next, have a quality antivirus system in place and make sure that your end users are properly trained. Today we're finding that the biggest threat within your network is actually your own users. Another key component of this layered approach is passwords. One very common mistake is using one password for everything, which obviously is a large problem if your security ever does get breached. We also suggest monitoring your identity online. You can do this with tools that actually search the dark web and let you know if there's been a breach utilizing your username or password. If you want to learn more about cybersecurity and how to protect your business, feel free to reach out and contact us here at Key Methods. We'd be happy to help. This is Dan Paquette with Key Methods with this week's Tech Tip.
Welcome back to Gwata TV. I want to thank Dan Paquette from Key Methods for our weekly tech tip. Every week on our episode, we feature a Gwata member who shares their insights, so appreciate his time. We're back now with Dr. Clarke. We've been talking to Dr. Clarke from Confluence Health about MyChart and about the accessibility it's providing to Confluence patients. Let's talk, before we move on, a little bit about what's the future of MyChart look like?
I think it's just adding more information that we have in the medical app, or in the MyChart application, for patients to be able to look at, you know, more of their chart information, so their patient notes. And then one thing that we're rolling out that we're in the works right now is called FastPass, which is an electronic wait list. So rather than having people having to work paper lists, it's actually electronic, and so if you're on that electronic wait list, you sign up for it, you get a push notification on your cell phone, and it says, it's kind of like, well, you got mail, but in this case, you have an appointment that you have requested, and it's a way of offering that appointment electronically. So we're just rolling that out currently, and it looks pretty exciting. We offered it, I think, about, I don't know, 450 appointments in that fashion, and I think we had about 24 people that had actually worked out to grab that appointment and part of that electronic wait list.
So they're getting faster service when they have an urgent need and they are on a wait list for.
Yep.
That's incredible.
Yep.
Great. Well, we wanted to talk about on today's episode telemedicine as well. So what is telemedicine, and what are you working on at Confluence Health around it?
You bet. Well, going back to kind of where we started this and just the geographic spread of Confluence, you can imagine that it's challenging for patients to come to certain locations where their doctors are, but it's also challenging for us to send the doctors. So it's called, I would call it windshield time. So that time driving in the car. And so telemedicine is really projecting medical services from one location to another and supporting a lot of different activities. So we've actually had several of them in place for a number of years. One of them is telestroke, which we had partnered with Swedish in Seattle and now also the University of Washington. And that's when a person comes in and they have stroke symptoms and we need to do some type of intervention very quickly. And if it's a very specialized type procedure where maybe it's actually removing the blood clot that actually had lodged in the brain, that's a specialized procedure that's done in Seattle. Having the linkage of video for the neurologist in Seattle or for the interventional radiologist to actually see the patient, to be able to see the films, to send, and have all that happen real time is a way. It's telemedicine. It's a way of extending services from one location to another. Another example of one that we've been doing for a while is our anti-coag clinics. So people who are maybe in OMAC or who are in Moses Lake, we have a team of medical specialists who help manage people's blood thinners, and so they don't necessarily have to drive all the way down to Wenatchee in order to get there. The patients don't have to drive all the way down, and we don't have to send the staff necessarily up there to do it. Really find out how the patients are doing and be able to do that real time with video. And then telemedicine is really pretty broad. There's a lot of organizations are really expanding their capabilities. So another one is there are certain problems in follow-up of specialty visits. So say for cardiology, a person is discharged from the hospital and they have congestive heart failure. You know, the cardiologist wants to be able to see them and talk with them about how their symptoms are. We even have an electronic stethoscope and set up so that we could actually do this remotely. But it saves the time of, especially in the wintertime, of having all these snowstorms and sending our cardiologists in all these different locations. Yes, they're still going to go, but and having patients having to drive all the way down here to see specialists, that enables in the appropriate type of clinical setting the ability to do that remotely. There's a lot of other examples, being able to support different hospitals in the area with some of our specialists. So if patients are in the hospital, it's nice to stay in your hometown, in your hospital, so your family can come and visit you. If it's appropriate in terms of the level of care, if we can support the teams, the hospitalist teams, or the docs that are taking care of the patients in those emergency rooms and some of our outlying hospitals, our critical access hospitals, if we can support them and enable the patients to stay there so they don't have to be transferred down, I think that's a win for the folks in those communities. Remote monitoring, so we are looking at how do we monitor folks in critical care settings? How do we have centralized folks that have a special expertise for intensive care unit patients, for example, where maybe we want to have some centralized monitoring of vital signs or indicators that maybe they're not doing well, and then we can alert the teams locally to take care of that. So it's really being the ability to project our services and our expertise. It's the ability to bring in external expertise that we maybe not have in the Valley, and it's the ability then also to have patients be able to stay where they are and maybe not have to do so much traveling. So it really lends itself to a rural setting that we have.
And I think it's very progressive that the approach is how can we better serve the patients and come to them and make it accessible versus maybe a traditional model where you have to come on site to the physician. And then I also think about for those who affordability and transportation are an issue, you're really breaking down barriers where maybe someone would go with a problem undiagnosed, or they would wait too long to go in because they can't make a 3-hour commute in, whether that's affordability or because of their job. So I think that's creating a healthier community throughout North Central Washington through your telemedicine services.
Indeed, that's the goal, and it's really about the patient. It's trying to get the the best care for that person and make it as seamless and as easy for them as possible.
And then from a lifestyle perspective, it breaks down those barriers that you can pick anywhere in North Central Washington to call home and still receive great quality of care, great quality of life, which is one of the assets of attracting people to our region.
Absolutely.
Well, Dr. Clarke, it's been really insightful to have you today. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the audience about Confluence Health and the work that you're doing, or a call to action for my chart?
Well, it really is an engagement. It's only as effective as, certainly from the My Chart piece, as we have people willing to use it. And so I would encourage everybody to sign up for My Chart and to become engaged and become part of their medical care. And that's really what it's all about. It's their medical record, and that's how they can manage it. So.
Absolutely. Well, we'll be sure to get information on My Chart to our viewers out there. Thank you again for being on Gwata TV. I appreciate your time. And stay tuned. We're going to have a quick commercial break, and we'll be back. It was great having Dr. Clarke from Confluence Health on today's episode of Gwata TV. If you're just tuning in now, I encourage you to check us out online, because we'll be recapping this full episode and all the great content about My Chart, telemedicine, and what's new at Confluence Health. I'd also like to take a moment to thank Confluence Health for being a supporter and upcoming sponsor for Gwata. Gwata is hosting the Flywheel Investment Conference on April 19th at the Stanley Civic Center in downtown Wenatchee. At the Flywheel Investment Conference, we provide seminars, premier luncheon, company competition, and social. And the theme of the day is connecting early stage companies and entrepreneurs with the resources they need to grow their company. A big highlight of the event on April 19th is a company competition, which is essentially a Shark Tank style, where you have early stage companies on stage pitching their company and trying to encourage investors to support them in their dreams. As a community member, you can come out to the Flywheel Investment Conference and enjoy these seminars, see the company competition, and engage in great networking with local entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs from across the state, and investors from around the Pacific Northwest. Thank you, Confluence Health, for being a presenting sponsor of the Flywheel Investment Conference, along with our friends at Moss Adams, Ogden Murphy Wallace, and Microsoft. For more details on the Flywheel Conference, check out our website. It's flywheelconference.com. Well, it's been a great episode today. Thank you for tuning in to Gwata TV. I'm Jenny Rojanasatian, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Since 1999, Gwata has served as North Central Washington's Tech Alliance. As a 501c3, our mission is to bring people and technology resources together to create a thriving community. Through our work, we aim to inspire, engage, and connect.